welcome to Rauta's Indie 5. Once again, 5 different bands, 5 different albums, 5 different styles. You know the drill if you're familiar with the Indie 5 concept, and if you're not, well, this is the case. Since I'm doing this video in Spain, I don't have the physical copies here with me. They are back in home in Finland, so let's just do this as metal archives as backdrop. First, we'll start from a band from US. This is Fer De Lance, of which previous EP I reviewed 2 years ago, called Colossus, and that was an interesting thing with kind of a Bathory meeting Ronnie James Dio kind of singing. If that doesn't sound good to you, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I can tell you that much. The EP was good. And so is this album called the Hyperborean. This is the debut album that was released last year, April 2022, and this pretty much picks up where the EP left off. That is, offering you almost 60 minutes of music, which is technically speaking kind of epic heavy metal, quite much leaning towards Bathory's Viking era. We're talking about Hammerheart, Twilight of the Gods, and so forth. But to be honest, the music is not that good. That is not to say it's bad or mediocrity, but the point here is, unfortunately, as much as I like the band, I do like it. The songwriting isn't right there. But what they're doing is, in essence, is some kind of a good heavy metal with a lot of epicness. I cannot emphasize too much the word epic here, because that's in fact what's going on. These songs sound kind of a majestic, as if they were, performed by a mountainside, and you would see glorious vistas all over the place. And then you have this kind of Ronnie James Dio resurrected doing the extraordinary vocals. So, to kind of sum it up, it would be saying better vocals than whatever Quarton ever did, singing clean and all that stuff with Bathory, but the songwriting is not on the same level. So how does this fit in the Bathory puzzle? Not exactly sounding like Bathory. Once again, the vocals are so dominating with the Dio kind of singing, and I do like them a lot, that I'm getting a lot of Bathory's epic vibes, but just less catchy and all. So while the vocals do a lot in order to get closer to Bathory level of majesticness, the songwriting is still a little bit just kind of a decent but not great. Overall, I would say this is a good album, and people who have ever been into Bathory's epic Viking stuff should definitely check it out. In my opinion, Fer De Lance is something that you need to keep in your radar, because it's in fact an interesting band, and I hope the songwriting will be reaching the catchiness and majestic vibes that Bathory was doing back in the days, because this is definitely 5-star band in the making. So check it out. The second band on this review pile here is a new side project from Italy called Patristic. In my opinion, actually, this backstory about the name of the band is more fascinating than the music itself. But I'm not going to recap. If you want to just read it, you will see the link provided in the description box. Let's just focus on the debut EP called Apologetica. This features 3 tracks of 20 minutes of something that we could call kind of a black and death. Now, if that is something sometimes hard to figure out what that means, because it could really mean something like war metal or some kind of a behemoth thing or something totally different. Well, this is very much like what exactly Behemoth is doing, just with kind of a more low budget version of that. That is not to say that the songwriting is worse or anything like that. Actually, this is very, very competitive with Behemoth's later works. But the problem is these songs are not exactly memorable. They kind of have the good atmosphere. So this is very, very easy to listen to and to some degree enjoy. But when you have songs that are actually quite lengthy, I'm not talking the middle one here, but the songs that are more like 9 minutes almost, you kind of have to have patterns or parts where you just really nails it. And that's where Patristic fails. Don't get me wrong, like I said, the production, vocals, lots of those riffs are kind of enjoyable. But there is this difference between decent stuff, which is like, hey, I like to listen to it, but would I buy it? Nope. and the ones that are truly great, like, hey, I want to put my money on this, I want to get a shirt, I want to get the CD or vinyl and all that stuff, I want to see them on stage. This is more on the decent side. Like, this could be nice to see on stage, and this is something that is kind of nice to listen to. But for me, not exactly worth my money. And I hope you get the difference. Way better than mediocrity, but not as great to blindly put my money on it. Interesting attempt to do Italian version of Behemoth, but nothing beyond that. Then we have another band from United States, and this is called Lunar. I don't know about you, but for me this kind of a name is reminding me of black metal. And here on Metal, like I said, it actually says Black Death Metal. So I was expecting something different, but to me it's like more like old school death metal with a little bit of black metal as seasoning. So it's definitely more death metal than black death, not to mention black. So the name kind of can give you a little bit of a weird vibe. But where it gets kind of a goofy is that when you take a look at these lyrical themes here, it says police brutality and veganism. Kind of a weird, even hipster level of topics, if you ask me, when it comes to this kind of music. Whatever it is, Twilight Insurgency is their debut album, and this is kind of a short and sweet, I mean less than 30 minutes of music. Very right to the point kind of tracks and all that stuff. And I guess the guys have the passion with these topics, which are in a way kind of a political, I guess. But unfortunately, the music doesn't really click. It's more like another boneheaded episode of doing the old school extreme metal, but in a way that it's one of a million bands doing the kind of stuff. I mean, it doesn't really stand out. None of these tracks are very interesting. They're not filled with good riffs and all that stuff. And even the production is kind of lame. So while it is basically, theoretically speaking, something interesting, like this could really, grow up and become an interesting band, this album, this debut one, it isn't cutting it. It's one of the kind of a gray bands that isn't bad, so to, kind of becoming a laughing stock, but it's not good enough to make an impact. It's just easy to give a couple of songs a listen and then move on. And mind you, I gave this a few spins altogether, so I know what I'm talking about, not just a couple of songs. Then we moved to Germany with another newbie band founded during the COVID era, Noctis Aeternae, which has EP under the same moniker. This is black metal in a way, very German ways. What makes this interesting is that there is very, very little information about the band, because no lineup whatsoever is mentioned, and if you go to their Facebook page, for instance, you will mostly see just album cover and whatever, and it's a very, very anonymous band. I could imagine this is one of those side projects that wants to stay anonymous rather than ride on the wings of some better known band. Whatever it is, the EP is actually quite okay. But what is the problem with this EP is that it actually has a Semael cover. The problem is it's the best track on this EP. The other ones, the lengthier ones, are their own songs, and they're much like the previous band I mentioned from Italy. The atmosphere is right there. It's evil, it's dark, it's very, very traditional second wave black metal. Everything is about good atmosphere and all that stuff. But when you're looking for memorable riffs, chorus parts, or something that really sticks, I mean, think of early Emperor or Mayhem or Gorgoroth or Darkthrone, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. This isn't an EP that features In the Shadow of the Horns or some Freezing Moons. We're talking about that kind of catchiness and memorability. Noctis Aeternae with this EP is more like, yeah, it's in the works. Easy to listen, but also easy to just forget it. It lacks the kind of points that it would really separate it from the big mass. Definitely something interesting is stirring up right here, but it's not good enough to make a bigger impact. The last, and unfortunately the least of this pile, comes also from United States, and it's Rübezahl. This is also interestingly here labeled as pagan black metal. And I was like rubbing my eyes for a couple of times to read it when I was listening to this music. I don't know to which release this pagan black metal genre is based on, but definitely not on the Remnants of Grief and Glory debut album that was released in the last few weeks of 2021, so more than a year-old release by this Alaska-based band. Now, this one runs for 50 minutes, which is just way too much given the style. This is more like some kind of a good example of mediocrity in the making. Absolute mediocrity with some kind of a boneheaded classic 90s melodic death metal. The death metal part especially comes from those growly vocals. There is absolutely nothing black metallic about it. They're just very, very basic, dry and to the point kind of a growliness, which isn't annoying, but let's be honest about it, there's nothing great about it. It does its job just fine, like a janitor cleaning an apartment or whatever. And when it comes to the riffs, the very same kind of words could be said about that. They are not bad. They are just like made in a factory. They have no personality, no memorability, no catchiness, no grooviness. And now you might think, okay, so it must be bad. But no, they are not bad. They are just the kind of a filler riffs, which you will hear on a million of different albums. The kind of parts which just, do their job between the better ones. But when you have an album that is made only of these parts, it's like it makes Obituary sound like the most innovative band on earth ever. And mind you, I don't think Obituary is bad. On the contrary, it's a good band. But let's be honest about it, their riffs are as boneheaded as the riffs can come, old school death metal. So Rübezahl is actually doing that kind of stuff and not in a good way. This album is, to a very point, kind of a boring one. I was kind of suffering because of it's too boring with 50 minutes and all. So not bad, but pure mediocrity. An average album in so many ways. Not sounding bad, not sounding strong, just very, very forgettable. Now, to sum it up, which would be the best one on this one would be actually Fer De Lance album. So give it a go. Or the other bands mentioned in the video, you will find links provided in the description box. Meanwhile, see you soon and greetings from Spain. Take care.